In this homework of section 4.1, we're going to use the reference rectangle and the rule of fourths to draw an accurate sketch of the following function. And we want two cycles, one where t is greater than 0, one where t is less than 0. And I need to state the amplitude and the period as you begin. So number 21, we have y equals negative sine of 2t. My period is equal to, for sine, is 2 pi divided by b, and here are b, so this equation is in the form so my b is 2, so I take 2 pi divided by 2, and I get pi. Once I find the period, I like to find the increment so I know how to graph it. So that is the period divided by 4 because I'm using the rule of fourths. So I like to kind of draw a little sketch of a reference rectangle. So if I split this into fourths and starting at 0 and the period is pi, then each of these little increments is pi divided by 4. So that's going to be 2/4 pi, which is pi over 2, and 3/4 pi. Okay, and the next thing I want to do is the amplitude. I think I messed that up. Amplitude, which is the absolute value of a. So that's a -1 out in front, so that's going to be equal to just 1. So starting at the center, this graph starts at the center of 0. So it has a height of 1 and a height of -1 from 1 unit from each direction from 0. Okay, so I know where on the grid it's going to be placed now. The only thing I have left is the pattern. I know it's a sine graph and it has a negative out front, so I want the pattern for the negative sine graph, which is going to start. So sine starts in the center, and then since it's negative, it's going to go down and then back to the center and then up to a maximum and then back to the center. So that gives us this pattern of the intercept, the minimum intercept, maximum intercept, those 5 points, which is the rule of fourths, splitting that graph into 4 pieces. Those 5 points split the graph into 4 points. So my sine pattern is intercept, min, intercept, max, intercept. All right, now time to graph that on a grid. So I like to do 2 tick marks per fourth of the graph, and I want a period before and after 0, because remember they said to do 2 cycles, one before 0 and one after 0. So I'll do it like that. So going forward from 0, I have these numbers right here: pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and pi. And going in the opposite direction, I have negative pi, splitting that. Another way to think about it is you do your 4s, and then you can do half of that, and then half of that one. And then between the negative pi over 2 and negative pi, we get -3/4 pi. All right, and then my amplitude is 1, so I'll make this 1, this -1. Which means my 5 points, let's see, I have one that starts at the intercept, and then I go up to the max. The max is going to be 1 at the first increment, and then over 2 tick marks to get to the next increment. Oops, I'm sorry, we're going down. Sine is a min, not a max. Negative sign, sorry. So from the intercept to the minimum, and then the next increment is the intercept, and the next increment is the max, and then the next increment is the intercept. So that gives me this curve. And since I'm going 1 period before and 1 period after 0, I'm going to continue that same pattern to the left. So from the intercept, now I go to the max, as I'm going in the opposite direction. then the intercept, then the minimum, and then the intercept. So I have this curve, which you can see that follows that same wave pattern. So that is my 2 periods. My reference rectangle is kind of this part here. And then the two cycles is shown here. I'll go ahead and do little arrows to show that it keeps going forever. I was also asked to state the period, which was pi, and the amplitude, which was 1.